They say the American Civil War was fought over freedom, but what if that's only part of the truth? What if behind the heroic speeches and textbook summaries, there were darker motives, hidden tensions, and uncomfortable realities that rarely make it into classrooms? Because the truth is, history doesn't just remember what happened, it remembers what people choose to tell. By 1861, America wasn't just divided, it was unraveling. 11 southern states had already declared they would leave the Union. The country stood on the edge of collapse. Most textbooks simplify the cause into a single word: slavery. And yes, slavery was central, undeniably so, but focusing only on that can hide a much bigger and more complex picture. For decades before the war, the United States had been quietly tearing itself apart. The North and South weren't just politically different, they were living in completely different worlds. The North was industrializing rapidly. Factories, railroads, and cities were expanding. The South, on the other hand, remained deeply agricultural, its economy tied to plantations and, crucially, enslaved labor. But here's the part often skipped over. Many people in the North weren't fighting to end slavery at all. In fact, at the start of the war, President Abraham Lincoln himself made it clear his primary goal was to preserve the Union, not to abolish slavery. That's right, Lincoln once wrote that if he could save the Union without freeing a single slave, he would do it. And if he could save it by freeing all slaves, he would do that too. Freedom at that point wasn't the mission. Unity was. So why does history often tell us otherwise? Because over time, narratives change, they evolve, they simplify, and sometimes they become more comfortable. Now, here's where things get even more complicated. Not everyone in the South owned slaves. In fact, most Southern whites didn't. Yet millions still supported the Confederacy. Why? Because the war wasn't just about slavery, it was also about identity, power, and fear. Southern leaders convinced many people that their entire way of life was under threat. That if the North gained too much control, the South would lose not just its economy, but its independence, its culture, its voice. And fear is a powerful motivator. Meanwhile, in the North, soldiers weren't marching into battle thinking they were part of a moral crusade. Many were simply defending their country as they understood it. Young men, on both sides, went to war believing they were right. And that's what makes this conflict so haunting. Because it wasn't just a war between good and evil. It was a war between two groups of people, both convinced they were fighting for something worth dying for. But then came a turning point. In 1863, Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. Suddenly, the war changed. Now, it wasn't just about preserving the Union. It became a fight against slavery itself. But even this moment wasn't as straightforward as it sounds. The proclamation didn't free all enslaved people. It only applied to the Confederate States, places where Lincoln didn't even have control. So why issue it? Because it changed the narrative. It turned the war into a moral battle in the eyes of the world. It discouraged European powers like Britain and France from supporting the Confederacy. In other words, it was as much a strategic move as it was a moral one. And yet, its impact was real.